I didn't think telling my neighbor to stay off my driveway would turn into a full-blown neighborhood war, but that's exactly what happened. My name's Tyler, I'm 36, and I live in a quiet suburb just outside Denver. You know the type: clean lawns, kids riding bikes, people waving but not really knowing each other. It's peaceful, predictable. At least it used to be. I bought my house about 3 years ago. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. One of the things I specifically liked about it was the long driveway. Fits 2 cars easily, maybe 3 if you squeeze. I work from home, but my girlfriend, Ashley, drives in and out every day, so having that space actually matters. For the first year, everything was normal. Then Mark moved in next door. Mark is hard to describe without sounding like I'm exaggerating. Mid-40s, always loud, always talking like he owns the place, even though he's just renting. The first time we met, he walked over while I was mowing the lawn and started giving me tips on how to maintain it. I should have seen the signs right there. At first, it was small things. He'd park a little too close to my driveway. His trash cans would somehow end up half on my side of the property line. Nothing major, just enough to be annoying. But then one day, I came home and saw something that made me stop my car in the middle of the street. There was a truck in my driveway. Not just slightly over. Fully parked. Like it belonged there. I sat there for a second, thinking maybe Ashley had a friend over. But no. I pulled up, got out, and walked toward the house. That's when Mark came out from his yard like this was completely normal. "Oh hey man," he said casually. "Hope you don't mind. I've got some work being done, and the guys needed space." I just stared at him. "They're parked in my driveway," I said. "Yeah," he nodded, like I'd just confirmed something obvious. "Just for a bit." For a bit. I looked at the truck, then back at him. "You didn't ask," I said. He shrugged. "Didn't think it'd be a big deal." That was the moment I felt it, that shift. Because it was a big deal. But not just because of the driveway. Because of the assumption. The entitlement. Like my property was just available. "Next time ask," I said. Sure, he waved it off. "Won't happen again." I should have pushed harder right then. I didn't. And that was my mistake. Because over the next few weeks, it didn't just happen again. It became a habit. What started as just for a bit quickly turned into whenever he felt like it. At first, it was once a week. Then every couple of days. Then, I stopped being surprised when I came home and saw someone else's car in my driveway. Different cars. Different people. Sometimes his friends. Sometimes random work trucks. And every single time, no warning. No message. No asking. Just there. At first, I tried to be reasonable. "Hey, man, can you give me a heads up next time? Hey, I actually need that space. Hey, this isn't really okay." Every time, I got the same response. Yeah, my bad. Won't happen again. Just needed it for a minute." Except a minute was never a minute. One evening, Ashley got home before me and called, clearly frustrated. "Tyler, there's a car in the driveway again," she said. "I had to park on the street." I sighed. "Is Mark outside?" "Yeah, talking to someone like it's his house." That was it. I drove home faster than I probably should have. When I pulled up, I saw exactly what I expected. Mark standing in the driveway. My driveway. Laughing with 2 guys leaning against a pickup truck parked right in the middle. I got out of the car and walked straight toward them. "Hey," I said, not even trying to hide the irritation anymore. "This needs to stop." Mark turned, still smiling like this was a casual conversation. "What's up?" "What's up is this isn't your driveway," I said. "I've told you before, don't park here." One of the guys shifted awkwardly. The other just looked away. Mark chuckled like I just made a joke. "Relax, man. It's just temporary." "No," I said. "It's not just temporary. It's constant." His smile faded slightly. "Why are you making this such a big deal?" That question hit harder than it should have. Because to him, I was the problem. "You're using my property without permission," I said. "That's the deal." He rolled his eyes. "It's a driveway, not a mansion." I took a step closer. "That doesn't matter." He crossed his arms. "You're really going to get worked up over a few feet of concrete?" At that point, I could feel the tension building. Not just in me. In the air. "Yeah," I said. "Because it's mine." There was a pause. A real one this time. Then he sighed dramatically, like I was being difficult. "Fine," he said. "We'll move." He turned to the guys. "Hey, let's go." Apparently we're not welcome. That tone. That sarcasm. Like I just kicked them out of a public space. They got in the truck and backed out. Slowly. Deliberately. Mark watched them leave, then turned back to me. You didn't have to be a jerk about it, he said. I stared at him for a second. I asked nicely, I said. Multiple times. He shrugged. Yeah. Well, now you don't have to worry about it anymore. Something about the way he said that didn't sit right. Not at all. Because it didn't sound like he was agreeing. It sounded like he was planning something. And for the first time since this started, I had a feeling this wasn't just about a driveway anymore. What started as just for a bit quickly turned into whenever he felt like it. At first, it was once a week. Then every couple of days. Then, I stopped being surprised when I came home and saw someone else's car in my driveway. Different cars. Different people. Sometimes his friends. Sometimes random work trucks. And every single time, no warning. No message. No asking. Just there. At first, I tried to be reasonable. Hey, man, can you give me a heads up next time? Hey, I actually need that space. Hey, this isn't really okay. Every time, I got the same response. Yeah, my bad. Won't happen again. Just needed it for a minute. Except a minute was never a minute. One evening, Ashley got home before me and called, clearly frustrated. Tyler, there's a car in the driveway again, she said. I had to park on the street. I sighed. Is Mark outside? Yeah, talking to someone like it's his house. That was it. I drove home faster than I probably should have. When I pulled up, I saw exactly what I expected. Mark standing in the driveway. My driveway. Laughing with two guys leaning against a pickup truck parked right in the middle. I got out of the car and walked straight toward them. Hey, I said, not even trying to hide the irritation anymore. This needs to stop. Mark turned, still smiling like this was a casual conversation. What's up? What's up is this isn't your driveway, I said. I've told you before, don't park here. One of the guys shifted awkwardly. The other just looked away. Mark chuckled like I'd just made a joke. Relax, man. It's just temporary. No, I said. It's not just temporary. It's constant. His smile faded slightly. Why are you making this such a big deal? That question hit harder than it should have. Because to him, I was the problem. You're using my property without permission, I said. That's the deal. He rolled his eyes. It's a driveway, not a mansion. I took a step closer. That doesn't matter. He crossed his arms. You're really going to get worked up over a few feet of concrete? At that point, I could feel the tension building. Not just in me. In the air. Yeah, I said. Because it's mine. There was a pause. A real one this time. Then he sighed dramatically, like I was being difficult. Fine, he said. We'll move. He turned to the guys. Hey, let's go. Apparently we're not welcome. That tone. That sarcasm. Like I just kicked them out of a public space. They got in the truck and backed out. Slowly. Deliberately. Mark watched them leave, then turned back to me. You didn't have to be a jerk about it, he said. I stared at him for a second. I asked nicely, I said. Multiple times. He shrugged. Yeah. Well, now you don't have to worry about it anymore. Something about the way he said that didn't sit right. Not at all. Because it didn't sound like he was agreeing. It sounded like he was planning something. And for the first time since this started, I had a feeling this wasn't just about a driveway anymore. The next morning, I realized exactly what Mark meant by, you won't have to worry about it anymore. Because when I stepped outside, my driveway was empty. But the street? Completely blocked. 3 cars. Parked right in front of my house. Not illegally, but close enough together that there was barely any space left for me or Ashley to park. And guess who they belonged to? Mark. I just stood there for a second, coffee in hand, staring at it like I was trying to make sense of something that didn't quite add up. Then I saw him, sitting on his porch, watching me, not even pretending to be busy, just watching, and smiling. That same smug, quiet smile. I walked over. Really? I said. He leaned back in his chair like he'd been waiting for this. What? You're blocking the entire street now? He shrugged. I'm parking in a public space. I clenched my jaw. You're doing it on purpose. He didn't even deny it. Well, he said, since your driveway is off limits. There it was. Petty. Deliberate. Calculated. You're seriously going to escalate this? I asked. He tilted his head. You're the one who made it a big deal. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep it together. This isn't normal behavior, Mark. He laughed. Neither is freaking out over a driveway. For a second, I just stared at him. Because this wasn't about logic anymore. This was about ego. And he wasn't going to back down. Move at least 1 car, I said. Ashley needs to park here. He shook his head. First come, First served. That was it. That was the moment I realized. He wasn't just being annoying. He was trying to win. And somehow, this had turned into a game for him. I walked back to my house without saying anything else. Because I already knew. Arguing with him wasn't going to fix this. That night, Ashley was pissed. "This is insane," she said, pacing in the living room. "He's doing this just to mess with us." "I know. So what are we going to do?" That was the question. Because technically, he wasn't breaking any rules. Annoying? Yes. Immature? Definitely. Illegal? Not really. And that made it worse. "I could call the city," I said. "But they're just going to say it's public parking." Ashley crossed her arms. "So he just gets to do whatever he wants?" I didn't answer right away. Because I was thinking. Not about reacting. About ending it. "Maybe not," I said finally. She looked at me. "What does that mean?" I leaned back on the couch. "It means if he wants to play games." I paused. He picked the wrong neighbor. Because for the first time since this started, I wasn't just annoyed. I was done being patient. The next move I made wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But it was intentional. If Mark wanted to play games, I was done reacting. I was going to start controlling the board. That same evening, I went outside and looked at the street again. 3 of his cars, parked like he owned the place. My house stuck in the middle like I didn't exist. Fine. I went back inside, grabbed my phone, and started reading. City parking rules. Residential zoning. Street regulations. Because here's the thing. People like Mark count on you not knowing the rules. And he was right about one thing. It was public parking. But not unlimited. Not completely unregulated. About 20 minutes later, I found it. A small clause buried in the city code. Vehicles can't be left unmoved on a public street for more than 72 hours. I leaned back in my chair and smiled for the first time in days. Because suddenly, this wasn't about arguing anymore. This was about patience. The next morning, I did nothing. Same the next day. And the next. I watched. Every time I walked outside, I checked the tires. Same position. Same dust pattern. Same spacing. He wasn't rotating them. He wasn't moving them. He was just leaving them there. Confident. Too confident. On day 4, I made the call. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just calm. "Hi. I'd like to report multiple vehicles that haven't been moved for several days." They asked for the address. I gave it. That was it. No confrontation. No yelling. Just process. 2 days later, a city truck showed up. I was inside when I saw it through the window. Parking enforcement. I stepped outside casually, like I had no idea what was happening. Mark came out almost immediately. "What's going on?" he asked, looking at the officer. The officer glanced at the cars. "These vehicles have been reported as unmoved beyond the allowed limit." Mark frowned. "They're mine." "That's fine," the officer said. "But they need to be moved regularly." Mark's eyes shifted, then slowly landed on me. I didn't say anything. Didn't smile. Just stood there, watching. "You reported this?" he asked. I shrugged. Just following the rules. That hit him. Because for the first time, he wasn't in control of the situation. The officer handed him a notice. "Move them today," he said, "or they'll be ticketed." Mark took the paper, jaw tight. "Yeah, whatever." The officer left. And the moment he was gone, Mark stepped toward me. Not aggressively, but not friendly either. "You really want to go this route?" he said quietly. I held his gaze. "You started it." He scoffed. "All this over a driveway." I shook my head. "No," I said. "This is about respect." There was a pause. A long one. Then he laughed. But this time, there was no confidence in it. "All right," he said. "You win this round." That word stuck with me. Round. Because that meant one thing. He still thought this was a game. And something told me. He wasn't done playing yet. For a couple of days after the parking enforcement showed up, things were quiet. Too quiet. Mark moved his cars. Not just a little. He spaced them out, rotated them, made it obvious he was playing by the rules now. But the way he did it, that told me everything. This wasn't over. It was just paused. And sure enough, about 3 days later, I woke up to a new problem. A much bigger one. I walked outside that morning with my coffee, expecting the usual. Empty driveway. Street mostly clear. Instead, I stopped dead in my tracks. There was a trailer, parked right across the edge of my driveway. Not fully blocking it, but enough. Enough that getting in or out would be a pain. Enough that it was clearly intentional. I just stood there, staring at it. Then I saw the truck it was attached to. Mark's. Of course. I looked over, and there he was again, standing in his yard, watching. not even hiding it anymore. I walked over slowly. Seriously? I said. He took a sip of his coffee like we were just two neighbors having a normal morning chat. What now? He asked. That trailer, I said, pointing. You're blocking my driveway. He turned his head, glanced at it, then shrugged. I'm not blocking it, he said. You can still get out. Barely. You're doing this on purpose. He smirked. I'm parking legally. There it was again. That same line. Different situation. Same attitude. I took a step closer. You know exactly what you're doing. And you know the rules, he replied. Public street. I clenched my jaw. Because technically, he was right. Again. But this time, it felt different. More aggressive. More direct. Like he wasn't just being petty anymore. He was trying to provoke me. Move it, I said. No. No hesitation. No pretending. Just no. That was new. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then he added, quieter. Or what? That question hung in the air. Because now it wasn't about parking. It was about control. About pushing until I snapped. I exhaled slowly. Or I'll handle it, I said. He smiled wider. I'd love to see that. Of course he would. Because this time, he thought he had me. No clear rule broken. No easy solution. Just enough gray area to make things messy. I turned and walked back to my house. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew. Reacting right now was exactly what he wanted. Inside, Ashley was already at the window. Let me guess, she said. New level unlocked. I let out a short laugh. Something like that. She shook her head. This guy is insane. Yeah, I said quietly. But he's also predictable. She looked at me. What do you mean? I leaned against the counter, thinking. It means every time he loses control, he escalates. I paused. And every time he escalates, he makes a mistake. Ashley crossed her arms. So what's the mistake this time? I looked back out the window at the trailer, at how it was positioned, at how close it was to the driveway entrance. And then I smiled slightly. Let's just say, I said, this one's not as legal as he thinks. Because this time, he didn't just cross a line. He parked right on it. I didn't rush this time. That was the difference. Before I reacted, I argued. I tried to reason with Mark like he was a normal neighbor. Now, I treated it like a problem to solve. That trailer sat there all morning, half blocking my driveway like some kind of challenge. Every time I looked out the window, it was still there, angled just enough to make things inconvenient, but not obviously illegal. At least, not at first glance. I grabbed my phone and went back to the same place I'd been a few days ago. City regulations. But this time, I wasn't looking at general parking rules. I was looking at obstruction laws, driveway access, visibility at curb cuts, distance limits. And it didn't take long. Because there it was, clear as day. Vehicles, including trailers, cannot block or obstruct access to a driveway entrance, even partially. I read it twice, then a third time. And this time, I didn't just smile. I felt calm. Because this wasn't a gray area anymore. This was a line. And he parked right across it. Around noon, I stepped outside again. Mark was still there. Different shirt, same attitude. You gonna keep staring at it, he said. Or actually do something? I looked at him. I am doing something. He smirked. Yeah? Like what? I didn't answer. Just pulled out my phone. And made the call. Same tone as before. Calm. Neutral. Direct. Hi. I'd like to report an obstruction of a residential driveway. They asked for the address. I gave it. Then I went back inside. No argument. No warning. No second chances. This time, I let the system handle it. About an hour later, a city enforcement vehicle pulled up. Mark noticed immediately. Of course he did. He walked out fast, already annoyed. What now? He said to the officer. The officer stepped out, looked at the trailer, then at the driveway. How long has this been here? He asked. Mark shrugged. Couple hours. The officer nodded slowly, then pointed. You can't park this here. Mark frowned. Why not? It's the street. Because you're obstructing a driveway, the officer said. Even partially. There it was. Simple. Clear. Final. Mark glanced at me, then back at the officer. It's not blocked, he argued. You can still get through. The officer shook his head. That doesn't matter. It's considered obstruction. I could see it in Mark's face. That moment, when he realized. He messed up. So what? I gotta move it, he asked, trying to sound casual. Yes, the officer said. Immediately. And if I don't? The officer didn't hesitate. It'll be ticketed. And towed if necessary. Silence. Mark looked at the trailer, then at me, then back at the officer. Fine, he muttered. He walked over, got into the truck, and started pulling the trailer away. Slowly. No confidence this time. No smirk. Just frustration. The officer stayed until it was fully gone. Then turned to me. If this continues, document it, he said. You have the right to access your driveway without obstruction. I nodded. Thank you. He left. And for the first time since all of this started, there was no tension in the air. Just quiet. Mark stepped out of his truck after parking it further down the street. He didn't come over. Didn't say anything. Just stood there for a second. Then went inside. No sarcasm. No comments. Nothing. And that's when I knew. Something had changed. Not completely, but enough. Because this time, he didn't win the round. He lost control. After the trailer incident, everything changed. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But in that quiet, subtle way where you suddenly realize. The tension is gone. For the first few days, I kept expecting something else. Another move. Another petty trick. Another round. But it never came. Mark stayed inside more. His cars, parked normally, rotated. No more attempts to block the street. No random trucks in my driveway. No comments. No smirks. Just distance. And honestly, that was weirder than the conflict. A week later, I was outside mowing the lawn when I saw him again. First time we'd been face to face since the trailer situation. He walked out, grabbed his trash bin, and for a second, it felt like we were back at the beginning. Two neighbors. Same street. Same space. But everything between us was different. I nodded once. Not friendly. Not hostile. Just neutral. He hesitated. Then nodded back. No words. And that was it. No apology. No argument. No final confrontation. Just an unspoken understanding. The line was there. And now, it wasn't going to be crossed. That night, Ashley and I were sitting on the porch, just enjoying the quiet. No blocked driveway. No stress. No watching the street every 5 minutes. She leaned back in her chair and sighed. I can't believe it's finally over. I looked out at the empty driveway. Yeah, I said. Me neither. She turned to me. So, were you wrong? I smirked slightly. For telling him not to use my driveway. She nodded. I thought about it for a second. About how it started. About how far it went. About everything it turned into. No, I said finally. I wasn't wrong. I paused. But I probably should have said it a lot sooner and a lot firmer. Ashley laughed. Yeah, that part one agree with. We sat there in silence for a moment. Peaceful this time. Real. And the funny thing is, this whole situation was never really about a driveway. It was about boundaries. And what happens when you don't enforce them early enough? Because once someone decides your space isn't really yours, they don't stop until you make them. A month later, something happened I didn't expect. Not another conflict. Not another problem. Something quieter. It was a Saturday morning. Cool. Calm. The kind where nothing really happens. I was out front washing my car, just enjoying the fact that I didn't have to think about who was parked where. No tension. No checking the street. Just normal life again. And then I heard footsteps. I looked up, and there was Mark. Walking toward me. Not confidently. Not casually like before. Slower. Almost hesitant. I straightened up slightly, water still dripping from the hose. Hey, he said. That alone caught me off guard. No sarcasm. No attitude. Just, hey. I nodded. Hey. There was a pause. An awkward one. Like neither of us quite knew how this conversation was supposed to go. Then he rubbed the back of his neck and looked down for a second. Listen, he said, about all that before. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Because this was new. He exhaled. I pushed it too far. That wasn't what I expected. Not an excuse. Not a deflection. Just that. I shouldn't have used your driveway like that, he added. Or the street stuff. The trailer, all of it. I watched him carefully. Because a month ago, this was the last thing I would have expected to hear from him. What changed? I asked. He let out a short, dry laugh. City gave me 2 tickets after that last thing, he said. And my landlord wasn't too happy either. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Guess I'm not the only one who noticed, I said. He nodded. Yeah, turns out you weren't overreacting. There was a pause. Then he added, quieter. I just didn't like being told no. That one felt honest. More honest than anything else he'd said. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I said. I figured. He looked back up at me. I'm not going to mess with your space anymore, he said. Your driveway's yours. I held his gaze for a second, then nodded. Good. Another pause. But this one wasn't tense. Just neutral. All right, he said finally. I'll see you around. Yeah, I replied. See you. And just like that, he turned and walked back to his house. No drama. No big moment. Just closure. I stood there for a second, thinking about it. Because the truth is, I didn't need the apology. I already got what I wanted. My space back. My peace back. But hearing it, that just confirmed something. People don't change because you argue with them. They change when consequences finally catch up. Later that evening, Ashley asked me what happened. I told her. She just smiled and shook her head. Wow, she said. Didn't think I'd ever hear that from him. Yeah, I said. Me neither. She looked out at the driveway. Empty. Quiet. Normal. So now it's really over? I followed Herv's glot. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't hesitate. Yeah, I said. Now it is.